You're listening to Focal Point with Brian Fisher. Focal Point with Brian Fisher.
Hi, and welcome back to Focal Point AFR Talk, talking with Jeff Reed, producer over the break. And, going back to this Lois Lerner thing just for a second, it's interesting to me that she wanted to launch an audit against Senator Grassley, even though it's completely outside her department. She had nothing to do with those kind of events outside her department. She's monitoring tax-exempt organizations, and she sends this email off to a colleague at the IRS. Isn't this a grounds for an audit? Shouldn't we audit this guy? This looks improper to me. This man's invitation to buy dinner for Grassley's wife. Grassley's going to speak at this event. The event organizers offer to treat Senator Grassley's wife to dinner, and she wants to turn that into a full-blown IRS audit. I mean, that just stinks all by itself. Now, here's the interesting thing, and her colleague writes back and says, "No, I don't think we can go after Chuck Grassley because his wife got to eat dinner with him at this event." So that went nowhere. But here's the interesting thing. That's how we found out that she has a BlackBerry. Remember, John Koskinen was asked, does Lois Lerner, or did she have a BlackBerry? He says, I don't know. Well, now we know. So there's another angle to pursue. So it'd be kind of interesting if she got hoist on her own petard here. She's trying to get Grassley in trouble, and in so doing, she reveals that she's got a BlackBerry. Maybe that becomes a thing that trips her up. One other comment. I need to answer the question from Eric, our last caller, about Mississippi election law. Just to close the loop on that. And it's absurd to me. I mean, I don't understand this. It's a quirk in the law because every time I've gone to vote in Mississippi, there's a write-in slot for every election. You got a write-in. You can, if you don't like the two guys that are on the ballot, you can write in your own guy. And I think that you ought to have a write-in option in every election. And somebody said, well, in Mississippi, at least in the November election, you write in Chris McDaniel's name, it's not going to count. So I said, well, this doesn't sound right to me. So I called the election office, the statewide election office in Mississippi, talked to the very nice lady there, and she said, yeah, that's exactly right. It doesn't count. We weren't talking specifically about Chris McDaniel, just talking in general, but it says if somebody shows up to the polls in November and they would prefer not to vote for Senator Cochran, they would prefer not to vote for Travis Childers, I'm going to use that as an example. We didn't talk names, but that would be the example. And you write somebody else in, that doesn't count. We don't count that. We don't tally those. We don't keep track of them. Those don't count. And I said, well, I don't understand. Why do you have a write-in line there at all? I mean, and people are going to be deceived. I mean, there's nothing on the ballot that says, hey, by the way, if you write a name on this write-in line, your vote's not going to count. It's nowhere on the ballot where you're given that information. If you assume like I did, well, this is an opportunity. If you're not satisfied with the options, here's an opportunity to write somebody's name in there that you think would better represent your values. There's nothing on there that tells you it's not going to count. We're just going to throw that ballot away. We're going to discount that. We're going to discard it. We're not even going to look at it. We're not going to count it. We're not going to record it. It doesn't count. We're just going to disenfranchise you if you want to cast a vote for somebody other than the guys that are on the ballot. I didn't know that. And I think a lot of people are going to show up. They see the write-in. Well, oh, good, I've got an opportunity here. And like I said, I still think a lot of people are going to go vote in Mississippi in November that are so outraged at what the GOP elites have done to them, the way they've really stolen this election from Chris McDaniel. I mean, Chris McDaniel got the most Republican votes. He probably got 25,000 more Republican votes than Senator Cochran got. He won the Republican primary. But the ruling class Republicans turned out 35,000 Democrats to vote for Senator Cochran, so he won the Democratic primary. Senator Cochran won the Democratic primary, but Senator McDaniel won the Republican primary. And there's a lot of conservatives just teed off at the GOP elites for sabotaging this election, for basically doing an end run around the clear intent of the law to give this election to their favorite candidate. I think a lot of conservatives are going to go and they're going to write in Chris McDaniel's name anyway. They don't want to vote for Travis Childers. They don't want to vote for the Democrat because they're concerned about what it's going to mean for nomination processes and other issues. So they're going to say, look, I just can't vote. I can't vote for the Democrat here because of what this is going to mean, make it easier for President Obama to get these radical nominees through or whatever. But I can't vote for Senator Cochran because it's just business as usual. It's the status quo. This is a senator that's part of the outfit that got us $17.5 trillion in debt. He's voted for every increase in the debt ceiling. He's voted for every budget-busting budget, every deficit-busting budget. I just can't vote for the guy that's going to be status quo. So I'm going to write in Chris McDaniel's name. I can write his name in there. My conscience will be clear. I will have voted for the guy that represents my values. And I don't even care. I don't even care that they're not going to count it. In fact, I don't know if you can do this. You know, it might be interesting for voters to take a picture of their ballot with Chris McDaniel's name written in it and send it somewhere, just so somebody has a tally of all of the Mississippians that voted for Chris McDaniel as a write-in. Let's assuming that the election results don't get overturned. I mean, that's still a possibility. You know, it's still a possibility that they will identify enough fraudulent ballots to redo this thing. And that gets back to the one last question that Eric was asking about, a Mississippi state election law. Now, there's two relevant portions of the Mississippi election law. Number one, if you intend to vote for the other party's candidate, it's against the law to vote in the primary of the other party. So in other words, if you are a Republican, you are not allowed by Mississippi law to vote in the Democratic primary if you go into the Democratic primary intending to vote for the Republican in November. In other words, the point of that law is to keep people from monkeying with each party's primary. Mississippi law doesn't want you to do that. They don't want you to sandbag an election by messing with the other party's primary. Now, if you're a Republican and there is a Democrat that you like, you want to vote for that guy, and you're happy to vote for him in November instead of the Republican guy, that's fine. It's an open primary. We're just expecting you to show some kind of honor and some kind of integrity here and not monkey with the system. Now, it's unenforceable. We've said that there's no way to enforce this thing. The Scooby-Doo Warren, he went out and said, look, I'm support Childers. I'm trying to get people out to vote for Cochran because I don't like McDaniel. But when it comes to November, there's no question. I'm not voting for the Republican. I'm not voting for Cochran. I'm going to vote for the Democrat. Well, he was announcing his intention and his declaration to break the law. You got somebody like that tells you what they're going to do. Maybe you've got a case of legal action, but it's virtually unenforceable because they're counting on people to be people of integrity and people of honor. And clearly all these people that voted for Cochran intending to vote for Childers in November, they aren't people of honor. They're not people of integrity. They're cheating. They're committing electoral fraud. And they know they're not going to get caught. They're not going to get punished. They're not going to get penalized. But they still have besmirched themselves and their own honor and their own integrity. Now, the other part of the election law, and this is where it gets of particular relevance, is if you voted in the Democratic primary on June 3rd, you are not allowed by law to vote in the Republican runoff on June 24. You can't vote in both primaries. You can't vote in both the Democratic primary and in any part of the Republican primary. It's one or the other. Now, there's a lot of people, McDaniel campaign thinking as many 1,000 people, and this is something, there's a record of this. That's why the election results can be challenged, because they've got poll books that have a record of people that voted in the Democratic primary on June 3rd. They have a record of the people that voted in the Republican primary on June 24. If any names show up on both lists, then that ballot doesn't count. That is an ineligible vote. It's a fraudulent vote. And they've got a paper record of that, and that's what the McDaniel people are looking into. And if they find enough fraudulent votes, people that voted Democrat on June 3rd, voted Republican June 24, they can challenge the results of the election. Well, let's grab a phone call before we're done. Let's go to Matt in Columbus, Ohio. Matt, welcome to Free for All Friday with Brian Fisher on Focal Point. What's on your mind?
Hey, Brian, good to talk to you again. It's a pleasure to be shoulder to shoulder with you as a Christian soldier.
Thank you, sir.
I had a quick, you made a comment, it's been a little while back, and I don't think I caught all of it, but you mentioned, this is regarding Bible prophecy, and you mentioned your take on the Great Tribulation, and I think you may have thought that we have already gone through that. Is that, Correct me if I'm wrong, but what do you think on that?
All right. Well, I appreciate the call. And let me, I'm not going to be able to give a total answer to your question because we'd have to range into other parts of the Bible. But the primary passage on the tribulation is found in the book of Daniel. Daniel's 70th week is a period of great tribulation. Now, my understanding of prophecy, Matt, is that Daniel's 70th week. Now, this doesn't deal with the issue of whether there are other passages that might say that there is a tribulation period still to come in the future. But as far as Daniel's 70th week is concerned, I believe that prophecy has already been fulfilled, that Daniel's 70th week has already taken place, and that Daniel's 70th week was fulfilled in the time of the Roman-Jewish War between 66 A.D. and 73 A.D. That was a 7-year period. You know, Daniel says in the middle of that tribulation week, sacrifice will be cut off. That would be a reference in the middle of this 66 to 73 A.D. period. In 70 A.D., Titus comes into the temple. He cuts off the sacrifice, stops it right in the middle. He cuts down the priests that were offering the sacrifices. The covenant was broken because there was a covenant between Rome and Jerusalem that the Roman emperor would allow Jewish sacrifices to be offered, and the Jews promised that they would pray every day for the emperor. They would offer morning and evening sacrifices in prayer for the emperor. And so they did that. There was a covenant. The Roman emperor said, I'll leave you alone to carry out your sacrifices. That covenant was broken in 70 AD. Titus went in, they destroyed the temple, they killed the priests while they were offering the temple. And that is where I think the middle period, the middle part of the Great Tribulation, Daniel's 70th week, was broken. And Daniel's 70th week ended when the final Jews committed suicide on Masada. So that's my take on all of that. Anyway, enjoyed having you with me this week. Have a great weekend. Don't forget to worship God on Sunday. Spend time with your family. See you back here on Monday.
The views and opinions expressed in this broadcast do not necessarily reflect those of the American Family Association or American Family Radio.